Welcome to the Earnings Whisperer. I'm Dr. B.
And I'm Benjamin Poole.
I'm dialing in from the mountains of North Carolina, just taking a little bit easy today, but still following the markets. We had big earnings week this week. We had Nvidia, Affirm, probably the second biggest earnings week of the earnings season.
Yes, that's
And
right.
Ben called a nice trade yesterday, and we also had a couple other levels that hit yesterday as well. So we're going to be talking about that today. So Ben,
That's right.
go
There
ahead.
are some stocks, just like any earnings season, right? There will be some that come short of levels because because of the implied volatility. It doesn't quite hit those levels. But there are other ones that just flush through levels, and that's kind of the beauty and the pain of earnings. And so we want to be able to capitalize on on the moves, but also be able to maneuver in and then cut our losses. And so one of the big losses that we had was actually a win at first, but if you would have taken levels at a different point, PDD or pin duo duo flushed through a lot of those other levels after already taking a win off of it. And we'll go ahead and show you that and kind of show you how we would have maneuvered out of that. And then, like Dr. B says, we had a winning trade on Chewy, and I'll show you exactly when I got in, when I got out, and everything in between.
Awesome. So
So,
Ben, are we able to share my screen? Can you see that?
so
Oh, you
this
want to
is
go ahead?
I was going to say, this is the earnings trading. This was from the last week, right? So we had Pinduo Duo, we did Trip, but we didn't actually put out Trip. There were a couple other ones. We did put out Nordstrom's that missed our levels. And then here was the pre-market for Abercrombie and Fitch, which hit our level, Chewy, which hit our level. And then we looked at Foot Locker, but not necessarily for the earnings traders. And then after the bell, we had Nvidia and CrowdStrike and Affirm and Salesforce CRM. And then so those were after the market, and then OKTA. So there were a bunch of different levels that didn't hit, but there are some that did hit. And then and then Dell, and then Lululemon, Ulta, and a couple other ones. So which one did you want to talk about first, Dr. B?
Yeah, I think we keep it short and sweet since there were so many. Let's go to the top, the big dog, Nvidia. So
Okay.
we'll show Nvidia here. And Ben, I'll just pull up the daily chart. But I think the first level we had. Where was your first level? Somewhere around one 118. Is that what I remember correctly?
No, my first level was 112.38. So
112. So it was lower. Okay.
yeah, so the implied volatility for Nvidia was over 10%. And so that's what I was looking for. What threw this trade off, I think, was the fact that although it did move over 10% in the pre-market, even before, that the earnings came out, it shot up to 128. And so that's part of one of the things that I didn't take into consideration when I did my calculation, because we tried to give out the levels around 315, but if it continues lower by $3 and that level is 325, but then right before earnings it hits up to 128. That 128 level is now that next 10% volatility. And so then it did get a 10% pullback. And so that's why it bounced off of the 115 level instead of the 112.38 level.
Sure. Yeah, and with Nvidia being up so far over the past several months and the past year, I was actually surprised, with this lower high that we didn't fall more down to the 112 or even $100 level, but still 9% down on Nvidia, and yeah, so we missed that, but that's okay. Chewy, let's talk about Chewy.
Okay. So here's what happened on Chewy, right? Let me see if CHWY. So that's my screen. I'm going to go ahead and change that screen. I'm going to go ahead and present it. Go. So we didn't have this pre-loaded for our earnings. And the reason, oh, no, it
No,
wasn't
actually,
Chewy. It was
we
Affirm.
Affirm, yeah, is the trade you
Yes. So
took.
it
Hmm.
wasn't preloaded in our earnings trader. And one of the reasons is Affirm and UPST are similar companies. And what we saw with UPST was it had some positive earnings, and this thing rallied from up almost 50%. And so this was one of the trades that we didn't want to get our members stuck in. And so, but we knew that we were trading it live. What I did was I actually took a fib retracement. So I'm going to go ahead and click to the daily. I took this level, disregard all the lines on my charts. It's okay. So I took this 50% retrace as price action went all the way up to 37.36. This was my actual first entry. And actually, it was my only entry. It was up about 17 or 18% on the day. And so I said, all right, guys, I am short AFRM at 37.36. I'm going to take about 50-cent profit. Here's my exit. And I told them my exact exit price. And then it hit that level and came right back in and filled us. It was right before the Nvidia earnings. And so it was perfect because we were able to get out of that trade with a 50% gain, which is about a 1% move off of that level. And so I was pretty happy with that. And I think a lot of the members were able to capitalize on it. And as you can
Yeah, I think
see,
that was great. Hmm.
yeah, I was going to say, as you can see, one of the reasons that I took a small profit was because it was such a key level. But Nvidia, first off, Nvidia was reporting earnings, but Affirm, just like a lot of the other ones, can rally. And sure enough, the level we got in was all the way down here, 37.36. And as you can see, it's up an additional 15% or close to 15% off of that level. And so that's the kind of the nice thing about the earnings is that you can get certain pullbacks off of certain levels, and then you take your profits, and then you let the stock do whatever it wants after that.
Yeah, that's awesome, Ben. That's awesome. And then we'll flip back over to my screen here and we'll take a
Yeah,
look at
absolutely.
Chewy. So you can see Chewy here was, we had a couple areas here for a short, and we can see that it actually hit this first level and then the second level here. So our average position was somewhere around here, and then it pulled back, pre-market. So yeah, we had a nice gain there. Well, we didn't take the trade, but if you saw those levels and traded that, you could have had a nice trade. So go ahead, Ben. You're going to talk about Pinduoduo, and then we'll move on to next week, what we're looking at.
That's right. So Pinduoduo was one of the charts that I had. I'm going to go ahead and read off. I'm going to share this screen so that way I can show you exactly the levels that I had on my chart. So give me 1 second while I switch over. Present, share screen. Here's Windows. All right. So here are the charts of PDD. So my first level, and this is all based on the implied volatility and support and resistance levels. So the first level hit, it got to 126.24. It almost got to my second level. And then when we look for a bounce on this, we look for basically a move. So a $1.20 bounce or in the money for these particular trades. And that's a win for us because we look for about a 10% move. And so it got to our first level, almost hit our second level. And then we got our $1.20. And then all of a sudden that trade then reverses. It's a similar thing that happened with us on AFRM, right? Where those first levels hit, we take a profit, and then either like Affirm, it continued to rise, but PDD actually continued to flush. And it actually flushed through all those other levels without giving us any bounce. So here's 126. Dr. B, do you have another chart? I'm going to just get these set up on my computer real quick. Maybe there's something
Sure.
else you want to talk about while I get these reset up on my screen.
Sure. I think I'll just go over AVGO for next week, while you get those set up.
Okay.
So AVGO, I had this nice, well, this is a little outdated here, but this is very similar to a very large semiconductor, just like Nvidia. And you can see if you overlay the chart of Nvidia with AVGO, it's very similar price action with these lower highs. This is telling me that, you know, really we were in an uptrend here with higher lows and higher highs, and now we're really kind of in a downtrend with lower highs and lower lows. So really, I'm expecting the same type of thing with AVGO. I think I'm expecting, a move down here. You can see there's a gap fill right in here. There's a couple other uh, trend lines that come up into this area, along with some Fibonacci levels. So if we pull a fib here, here's your here is your point 0.5, which we've bounced off of here, and then also actually, hang on, let me just pull it like this. So we're going to pull from, oops, hang on one second. So the low to the high, the point 0.5 fib will be right around here, 150. So I just reversed the fib before. So the point 0.5 fib will be, about $9 lower. It shouldn't move as much as Nvidia did, but again, you can see that it has had a big move to the upside. So I am a little biased towards the downside. And yeah, there's also a couple support levels in this area right here below the 618. So I'll probably start right at this gap fill right below the point 0.5 and the 618, then these pivot highs, and then probably stop out somewhere in here. And then to the upside, I would probably start here at this pivot high, probably get in somewhere just before these pivot highs, add on a Pierce, and then I'd probably stop out on, a price movement above the all-time high.
Yeah, so AVGO was another one of those stocks that did a stock split, and it started to rally right after the news that, hey, AVGO was going to do a stock split. And so the same thing that happened with Nvidia, right? You've got all this hype of AI stock splits and, to the moon with everything. And so what I see with AVGO is now that it's actually still above its previous earnings report, it's got to not only do better, but it's got to do a lot better for it to come in and keep the evaluation, right? It's got to really blow the earnings out of the water. Again, it's close to its all-time highs. It's trading above the last few earnings reports, and it's right now it's a monster. So it's got to really live up to the hype for it to continue up. So I actually feel it's going to do something similar as Nvidia did, where it drops significantly, probably about 10 or so percent, and then starts to get more of a bounce. So that's what I see with it. And so I like those levels for AVGO.
Fantastic. Yeah, so we talked about Nvidia, Affirm, Chewy, and now AVGO for next week. So there's a couple big companies like AVGO. There's C3 AI, which should have a lot of volatility. We'll probably post for that as well. So, but yeah, I think we're on average we're getting about 2 winners per week, right? And then we're having probably about 2 to 4 of our post hit those levels every week. So maybe 4 to 6 per week where you can profit.
Right. So I just want to go over real quick because I don't want to paint the picture of it's all sunshine and rainbows. So I'm going to go over the
Sure.
Pinduoduo chart with you guys. So I'm going to stop sharing that screen. I'm going to start sharing my other one. And thanks for allowing me to get my my charts set up. So
No problem.
as you saw, if you would have written them down, 126.24, 122.49, 118.26, 114.12, and 110.34 is actually 110.38 if you guys saw. So anyway, so what happened on earnings was you had this huge fall, and then you got a little bit of a bounce, and then so I was wrong. It did hit our second level. This is the beautiful thing about dollar cost averaging, right? We want to capitalize on the initial capitulation or the initial joy of the markets. And so I know we do say that you can use all of our levels because they generally are strong support or resistance, depending on where you're looking. You notice it flushed through the first 2 levels, and we're looking for about a 10% move. So at this, it was $22. And so once we got about $2 into the money, I would have said $1.20 just because of the size of the move down. And I actually put that in the charts. So your average price would have been right here, 124. And so if you notice, you could have gotten $3. So even if you're trying for that 1% move and would have tried for the $2 bounce, you could have gotten that as well. And so then you wait for the next level. And as you can see, price action hit on this a couple times and you got a significant bounce. So you could have actually played this secondary level as well. The third level, it finally came down and hit this third level. You wouldn't have gotten as big of a bounce, but it was still $1.57, right? One thing to keep in mind, once a price action gets close to a level and does this huge bounce, that level is off of the table. And so although these levels are there, you still have to decide on how to take the trade yourself and what factors and how you go about doing it. If you're looking at the pre-market and it comes into those levels, and then you also see volume starting to decrease a little bit prior to the market opening, then you've got to reconsider whether or not you want to enter that trade. And so as you can see, volume is still pretty light. And then all of a sudden, the price action finally hits our final level and then really flushes out. So that's when, at that point, you could have traded this a couple of times. If we have our final level, that's when you would say, okay, so it flushed this level. I've already made money on this a couple of times. I'm going to go ahead and cut my losses at this third and final level. And so that's how you maneuver through our trades. You can take them a couple different times, but you have to be willing to navigate them yourselves if you're not taking them with us in the live trading floor or when we trade after hours. So just
Yeah,
kind of
that's
wanted
a
to go
great
over
point,
that
Ben. Hmm.
because I know some of our members are watching this, and I want them to know that, again, these levels, like this came within, pennies of my level, 40 cents. And so these levels are strong levels. But again, you've got to be willing to take the profit and then wait for that next level. Take the profit, wait for that next level. And then when they finally flush the lower level, you've got to know when to cut your losses. So that way you can move and maneuver or look at a different trade or look at a different chart setup. So
Hey, Ben, that was fantastic. Look, I've got to run over to the Apex Day Trading Room. Join us on the earnings trader on verifiedinvesting.com if you're interested in this type of analysis and profiting from the moves on earnings. And we will see you guys next week. Ben, I've got
yeah.
to run. Take
All
care.
right. Take care, guys.